pretty sure across the fandom, we all knew how this chapter was essentially going to go down. It was just going to be an absolute slaughter of, on part of Toji. He was just going to be an absolute mad lad and just get ready to run a train down on Dagon. And so, in this chapter, we did get an explanation of how exactly he's still around and how everything's set up is just like a freak kind of set of circumstances of why this is kind of happening. But it makes sense from how we know like the abilities like are set up, but also what we know about Toji. So he comes in. Still, I really like how it's made to kind of like parallel scenes with Satoru when he was like upside down and the way the clouds roll around him. I think that looks great. I think that one of the aspects about Jujutsu Kaisen that I think gets overlooked if you aren't one of the people looking for it is there's a lot of character parallels. There's a lot of parts where Akutami will take the characters and kind of like shift certain scenarios to kind of just add that mirrored imagery of each other. Like there's a lot of them with Yuji and Yuta, and Satoru and Toji are getting some right now as well. There's some more in there. I'd have to go look and have a little search. I haven't done a ton of it, but I have noticed some of some of the more parts that I bet there's people that are like way harder and like looking for parables that can just kind of like spit out like 10, 20 of them like right off the bat or something. But as it were, he comes in. First thing he does is he takes Playful Cloud from Maki, just grabs it, and it's not like he like just grabs it and like pulls out of her hand without doing anything. She's still got a grip. He pretty much just whips her off of that thing with like just his level of strength and just takes it from her with like just straight overpowered force. And she's like just saying like she doesn't sense any cursed energy, and so she lost in a battle of physical strength. Because Maki is very physically strong. She's a very skilled fighter. That's been her thing. That's been her whole setup, is because she doesn't have cursed energy. She's able to kind of just do everything based off of like skill level and the tools that she has. And everybody else there that's kind of like a little bit nervous of what's happening, because you have like Maki doesn't know about him, and even though that Megumi is is Toji's son, he never really knew his dad, so he's like a little like confused about him. Nanami, I was a little bit unsure of, just because we don't know if like he had ever heard of him or ran into him. We knew for a fact Naobito had to know about him, obviously, because Naobito's the head of the family, and Toji was part of the Zenin clan until like only a good amount of years recently. It's not like he's like some ancient being. Like he, what was it? It was what, 7 or 8 years I think prior. I'd have to look exactly at the timeline, but it wasn't that long ago in reality. And now you have this guy who was like a very, very controversial member of the Zenin clan back, and there's like an explanation essentially how it worked. And just a TLDR, like the way it worked, the old lady, she was the one summoned the soul of a dead person, put it in her grandson, and until his cursed energy like would run out, he would stay in it. But because of the fact that Toji doesn't have cursed energy, there's no timer on it. There's no power kind of like letting down on it. Because it would be like, oh yeah, I can use their techniques, but obviously like I can only use so much before I run out and I get reverted. He doesn't have any, so because of that, he's just kind of always going to be like this. He's always going to be in this, and because of the way that Toji is, he was just able to kind of just overpower him. His soul is stronger, and at this point, he just took over his body. That's how he's able to essentially get his body back. So you could honestly like continuously summon Toji, which is really interesting, because he essentially could be like a very dangerous kind of double-edged sword that if you ever had like, we need to summon someone really powerful in order to deal with like a character, but it's like maybe like we know one thing we can do, but it's like letting out the Hulk, a like full uncontrolled version, and he's just going after who's ever strongest, whoever he can kind of just see as like the biggest enemy around. And he's got Playful Cloud, unlike other special grades, this one doesn't have like a technique in it. It's just very powerful, very dangerous, and obviously like it's dependent also on the user. So you have essentially the perfect person to use it. You have Toji, who's just laying in, slapping this dude around, just beating Dagon like senselessly. And he's too fast for him. He's got too much physical strength. And his level of control and just like fighting style is just overwhelming to him. And and really when you think about like just the way Toji is, he is like a very like basic wild card that a lot of these guys wouldn't expect. It's kind of like in Black Clover with Asta. You like same thing with like Toji is you have these characters who like in their world like these guys will usually have a weird power and it's like okay what is this guy's power? How am I going to get around it? How am I going to utilize my power on this and whatnot? You're trying to kind of just strategize around like your enemy. You're trying to like okay what is this guy's gimmick going to be? What am I going to have to be looking out for? But Toji, similar to Asta, Toji is just he is a fast like heavy hitting, just like close combat martial arts dude. Obviously, Asta's not like a martial arts dude, but you know what I mean. Where he's just a close combat brawling dude, and here he is just showing that. When you have these characters who are used to like, okay, yeah, we might have to fight some physical combat guys, but when it's so heavily just over like heavily powered when it comes to like their level of just like again raw speed, raw like destructive hitting capabilities, just like technique. He's just too dangerous for somebody like this, and especially like Dagon because we know that he doesn't have a lot of combat experience as a cursed spirit. So somebody like this is just completely overwhelming to him. And then Toji's doing some work with it. Like he's got this thing that doesn't have a technique. So it's just a very powerful beat stick. So he essentially takes one of them and just like starts hitting them together and just kind of like whittling one side down. So he's got a spear. He's just got a tip. So he can just stab it. It's not like blunt force anymore. Now he's going to have piercing damage on top of it. He's just doing what he can to be an absolute bloody, savage, like malefic monster of just like unending, relentless damage. And here he is like in this. They're still trying to like do what they can. Like now Bito's going to attack and like aid, and he's only able to do so much. But here comes Toji after that point, like taking the staff links and just driving it down, stabbing it right through Dagon's face, and I just can see him only dominating this dude until he's defeated. Like Toji he's just such a wild card in the series, and that's one of the things I really like about like him in general, but also like him more in this setup is he's not on either side. He's just like this super dangerous, like chaotic being thrown into the mix. Who if harnessed properly, like if they just can kind of kite him into where all the really dangerous like cursed spirits are, they probably have a lot better chance. And that'll be such a weird twist because I know some people are thinking like, obviously. Yuji's the main character, but it looks obviously that's kind of out of the way right now. You have like their hopes on Yuta, but Yuta, I know a lot of people are speculating that he's actually a traitor. He was seen with one of the members of Geto's crew, so maybe he ended up switching sides. And who else is really going to be in the mix? Like you don't really know where Yuki is, and Toji to me is just like the best option for it. And now he's on top of this got a special grade weapon. He's just going to be just laying it in on him. And this chapter was really cool because it read super fast, but it's one of those ones, again, and I think that when Jujutsu Kaisen does one of them, when you go to have one of these chapters where it's like, oh man, I read that really fast. It's only been 3 or 4 minutes. But then you want to go reread it just because it's so brutal. And like obviously Akutami's like known for like the ability of just having really good choreographed scenes, like really good fights. When you're doing very martial arts heavy kind of bits, it just looks badass. And especially someone like Toji, who is just a straight beat stick man. He's just a thug ready to like parkour around and just lay into somebody. So I knew I was going to be hyped for this chapter. I figured it was going to go like this. 100% I figured it was going to go exactly like this. But I was hyped for it nonetheless, and I was really happy to see it go down. Because he's just a character that even when he was bad and we didn't know like the actual circumstances, his backstory, he was just one of those guys where it's like he's such a bad guy, but I can't help but like him because he's so fun to watch. He's such an entertaining bad guy. And now we're seeing him like this. I'm wondering if they're going to have like any way of like getting his consciousness back, or if he's going to forever just be this kind of like mindless destroyer. I don't know. I'm very curious in that regards because otherwise it's like, how are they going to use him? Like, is there a way that like they could kind of like seal him and maybe like have him kind of like as a like if they had a way to seal him up and then it's like are we willing to take the risk in this scenario to let him out? And then it'd just be like throwing a dangerous Pokemon out there at that point. And then it's like at the end, it's like, okay, yeah, we beat the bad guys, but now we all have to like figure out how to try to reseal them or just like neutralize the this dangerous being. So pretty hyped up, pretty fun and fast read chapter. Like I said, I've gone through it probably like 3 or 4 times now. Just the last couple chapters have been really fun to go through again, especially this one. I think I knew I was going to be really hyped to see just because I really like Toji. He's definitely one of my favorites in the series, and he just stands out a lot. And especially because I think one of the things that actually makes him stand out the most for me personally is, obviously, like, I'm a big fan of Hiro Mishima. He very rarely treats the Blood Knight character who just wants to, like, go in and just cause chaos and just action and damage. He's not really one to ever like give a lot of those guys like a lot of love. They're usually the ones that go down first because he plays about more of being kind of like irrational, underestimating their opponents, and just kind of like getting into bad scenarios that any character that kind of like thought more about it would have been like, yeah, that's a bad idea. Why would you want to do that? But having Toji, it's just refreshing. It's kind of like Kenpachi. I think that's one of the reasons I also really like Kenpachi. Like it's not a bad thing, but you have one of those characters, so it's like usually they're the ones to go down pretty quick, and you never get to see them really flourish. It's nice to see. It's also someone like Gallon from Seven Deadly Sins. He was the same way. Like he was really fun to watch, but he was that same kind of Blood Knight setup, and then like he got like beat up back to back, and then just kind of got thrown away. And it's the same thing. It's like I really always loved that character archetype, but the ones I see generally get taken down pretty fast. So just Toji in general, even though he died, he got like a lot of character stuff, and so seeing him come back, I'm really excited to see. Like I like a lot of the characters, but like in terms of just raw enjoyment, he's got the same thing with Nanami, where when Nanami is just on the screen, I can't wait just to see what he does. And Satoru has that to a degree, but Satoru to me also is more about like power level flex because he's still ridiculously overpowered. But Toji and Nanami are just straight brutal, like throwing hands, like as just like cold clocking thugs. Because Nanami has that kind of setup of more of like, he's like that old badass guy you'd see in like movies. Even though he's not that old, he's like that guy who's like in his 50s, but he's still ready to beat ass. He just kind of like rolls his sleeves up, getting into some like street brawling stance, and you think he's just some goof, but he's just laying cold clocks out and then just taking dudes down just as an absolute meat wall. Whereas Toji is just a psycho martial artist, like savage, and I love seeing that. But anyway, other than that, comment below, tell me your thoughts about this chapter, and tell me what you're most excited to see come up. Because this arc has been going on for a long time. It's definitely the longest arc, I think, in the series. Like we're at like part 28 of the Shibuya incident, and like it's been nonstop, like a lot of crazy action and just like really well put together fights, and I've really been enjoying seeing how this has all been going. So just to see where this goes next with Toji in the mix, I'm really hoping that he has like a human moment where he talks to his son. I would really like that, especially when we know that he actually cared a lot about his son, but he was trying to get away from that because he knew like how things were gonna go. I know Maki and him could have some really interesting synergy of, have this family member that's like in her mind, and I'm just wrapping this up because I wanted to mention this because I think with Megumi there's some good character stuff, and they're obviously father and son, but I'm interested to see with Maki, because from Maki's standpoint, this is like the individual that's perfect for her to like train with and to like see as like pretty much like an idol. Like he is somebody that she can become. Like it's not as much as like impossible for her dream of becoming head of the Zending clan when she could see somebody in a pretty much the same setup as her, but fully capable, and she just like that her dream potentially being in like capable and in sight with Toji, I think will be really cool for her character too. So I'm very hyped to see how that goes. But anyway, other than that, comment below, tell me your thoughts are about this chapter, and tell me what you want to see coming up. But other than that, really appreciate if you would thumbs up the video, but from the like button and the subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But other than that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.